Out in Oakland in the early 2000s, the streets still looked pretty familiar. Boxy Gilligs and old new flyers rumbled past corner liquor stores and taco stands, all right angles and flat glass. Then, one morning, something different slipped into the lineup. A curved, silver-bodied bus with a sloping nose and big sheets of glass gliding between the squares. It looked less like a city bus and more like a little European tram that had somehow taken a wrong turn across the Atlantic. That sleek machine came from Belgium, from a builder named Van Hool. Since 1947, Van Hool had made its name in Europe building handsome, high-tech coaches and city buses, long on comfort, long on engineering pride. Across the ocean, AC Transit in Oakland was hungry for change. They wanted to bring Europe to America, to give East Bay riders something modern, fast, and dignified. Between 2002 and 2007, the agency signed on for more than 230 Van Hool buses, A300s, A330s, and AG300 artics, spending roughly $97.2 million on the dream. The pitch was simple: a modern, low-floor design, 3 wide doors, and a full-length flat aisle that could deliver true European-style BRT to California. Europe has already perfected transit, one planner liked to say. We'll just import the future. And that future, once it touched American pavement, slowly began to crack. From a distance, the Van Hool A330 looked like progress itself, sleek, quiet, and futuristic. But underneath that European shine was an engineering package that made transit planners swoon. The bus stretched 40 feet long and 102 inches wide, weighing in at roughly 27,000 pounds. Power came from a Cummins ISL diesel engine rated around 280 horsepower, paired with a 4-speed Voith automatic transmission, a solid, proven drivetrain tucked neatly into an unconventional body. That body was the part everyone talked about. Instead of a separate frame, the A330 used a monocoque unibody, lighter, stronger, and more rigid than the ladder frame buses most Americans knew. Its engine sat offset to the right rear corner, leaving a flat, uninterrupted aisle from front to back. And the independent air suspension at all 4 corners gave it a smooth, floating ride that made even potholes feel polite. Inside, it was pure European logic. 3 wide doors, with the middle one equipped with a wheelchair ramp and room for about 32 to 33 passengers. The cabin felt open and airy, free of steps in the center aisle. From the driver's seat forward, the A330 looked more like a modern tram than a city bus. Rounded mirrors, sculpted headlights, smooth body panels that cut the wind instead of fighting it. On paper, it was everything a 21st century transit system could ask for. But paper doesn't carry passengers, and America, as Van Hool was about to learn, doesn't live on paper. But that smart design came with a catch few noticed at first. The A330's low, flat floor looked wonderful on the spec sheet, but inside, it created a maze of subtle hazards. To make room for the suspension and fuel system beneath, Van Hool engineers raised most of the passenger seats onto small platforms, about a foot, or roughly 30 centimeters, higher than the aisle. For younger riders, that meant nothing. But for the elderly, or anyone with balance problems, it was a daily test of luck. One of those riders was Pamela Daniels, a longtime East Bay resident in her 60s. One afternoon, she lost her footing while stepping up to a seat. The fall shattered her leg. Complications followed, and doctors eventually had to amputate below the knee. Her story spread quickly through Oakland, shaking a community that had trusted these new, accessible buses to make life easier, not harder. AC Transit's own records backed up what passengers were feeling. The rate of onboard falls aboard Van Hool buses was reported to be 2 to 3 times higher than on the locally built Gilligs running the same routes. Local papers began calling the A330 the low floor that trips people up. Riders began giving it cruel nicknames. Van Hells, a bitter twist on the maker's Belgian name. As one passenger put it with a dry laugh, They said it's low floor for everyone. They didn't say it's a trap for your knees. The promise was comfort, dignity, accessibility. What many passengers felt instead was hesitation and fear. It promised accessibility and delivered fear. If passengers had their complaints, the drivers had plenty more. By 2007, AC Transit decided to ask its operators what they really thought of the new Belgian fleet. The results weren't flattering. In a survey of 230 drivers, the van Hool A330 scored an overall average of just 2.82 out of 5, and for ride quality, an even lower 2.38 out of 5. Across nearly every category, visibility, comfort, control, it ranked below average. From behind the wheel, the problem showed up fast. The short wheelbase that helped the bus corner easily also made it bounce and hop over every rough patch of pavement. The driver's seat sat too low and too tight, forcing operators into an awkward, cramped posture during long shifts. The massive A-pillars on either side of the windshield created blind spots big enough to hide a pedestrian, and the heavy steering demanded constant muscle to keep the bus centered. Even the brakes were too touchy, jerking passengers forward if the driver wasn't feather light on the pedal. One veteran operator summed it up in a single line: "You fight it every mile." Another just shook his head and laughed. "We didn't get a bus. We got a headache on wheels." For a machine that looked like progress, it felt like punishment. Technically advanced, yes, but ergonomically and practically, it ran opposite to everything American drivers expected. Innovation means nothing if drivers hate it. For the people behind the wheel, the A330 had already worn out its welcome. But for the people signing the checks, the story was about to get even uglier. What began as a design experiment soon turned into a financial and political storm. On paper, the math didn't seem so bad. A standard Gillig 40-footer built in California around 2000 cost roughly $266,000. The new Van Hool A330, introduced in 2002, came in at about $300,000 per bus, plus another $7,500 to $13,500 just to ship each one across the Atlantic. That alone raised eyebrows at local board meetings, but the real sting came later, when the bills for upkeep started rolling in. The A330's curved body panels and custom glass could only be ordered from Belgium. When a mirror cracked or a windshield shattered, mechanics had to wait 4 to 8 weeks for replacements to arrive. Each day a bus sat idle, AC Transit paid the price. Over time, the numbers grew impossible to ignore. The maintenance cost averaged about $1.10 per mile, compared to just 44 cents per mile for the home-built Gilligs. Worse yet, none of these imports had ever been tested at the Altoona facility, the federally mandated proving ground for transit buses. AC Transit had sidestepped the Buy America requirement by using local funds instead of federal grants, which meant no domestic content rules and no test certification. That technical loophole became a public relations nightmare. Union leaders accused the agency of exporting American jobs. Local politicians piled on, and headlines followed. Both the San Francisco Chronicle and the Washington Post ran blistering stories asking, "Why are we buying Belgian buses?" By 2009, the backlash forced a change. AC Transit passed a new Buy America First policy, effectively ending further Van Hool imports and canceling pending orders. They paid for modernity and bought a PR disaster. Even as the headlines faded, the buses kept rolling, at least for a while. AC Transit tried to make the best of its expensive investment, painting the A330s a striking red and branding them as part of the rapid service along San Pablo Avenue and International Boulevard. On the surface, they looked like the promise fulfilled. Sleek, fast, European-style buses bringing a touch of modern transit to the Bay Area. Across the country, Washington, D.C.'s circulator system also adopted the A330 for its downtown loops. Tourists loved the look. Its curved glass and flowing lines stood out against the blocky American fleet. To the casual eye, it really did look like progress. But under the paint, reality told a different story. When one of those curved windshields cracked, parts had to be ordered from Belgium, and the bus could sit 2 months waiting for delivery. The composite body panels that once looked futuristic proved nearly impossible to repair, prone to cracking under heavy use. Within 8 to 10 years, many of these modern buses were quietly parked, cannibalized for parts, or sold off cheap. The A330 had been designed for smooth European boulevards and mild weather, not for Oakland's heat, potholes, and steep hills. On Belgian boulevards it danced, one mechanic joked. In Oakland, it limped. Yet even as the standard diesel A330s stumbled, a few of them found a second life, one that would quietly redeem the name. Between 2005 and 2010, AC Transit worked with Van Hool to build a small fleet of fuel cell hybrid A330s, using the same chassis, but replacing the diesel heart with a hydrogen electric system developed by Ballard Power and UTC Power. These buses ran as part of the ZEBA project, the Zero-Emission Bay Area program, funded by the Department of Energy and the Federal Transit Administration, with data collection by NREL. The goal was simple but bold: to test whether a full-size city bus could run quietly, cleanly, and reliably on hydrogen. The results were surprisingly promising. Each bus could travel about 220 miles per tank, refueling with hydrogen in just 10 minutes. They were whisper-quiet, smooth, and emitted nothing but water vapor. Maintenance costs were still high, but the data they provided would shape the next generation of zero-emission vehicles. That experiment became the seed for later breakthroughs, the Van Hool Exquisity H2 in Europe and the all-electric CX-45E in America. The bus that failed on pavement helped invent the future of air. In the years that followed, the A330 quietly disappeared from American streets. After the controversy, the lawsuits, and the mounting costs, Van Hool withdrew from the U.S. transit bus market entirely, choosing instead to focus on what it did best: high-end coaches like the C2045, CX35, and CX45. AC Transit, burned by the experience, turned back to homegrown manufacturers. The agency rebuilt its fleet with Gillig and New Flyer buses, machines that were simpler to maintain, cheaper to run, and built just a few hours away instead of across an ocean. In classrooms and conference papers, the Van Hool A330 lived on in a different way. Urban planning programs and BRT studies began citing it as a textbook case of an imported design failure. It became shorthand for what happens when good ideas ignore local realities. The lesson was clear: localization before innovation. You can't simply copy a European concept and drop it onto American asphalt without redesigning the details that matter. It ended Van Hool's dream, but it taught America caution. In the end, the Van Hool A330 wasn't a bad bus. It was a brilliant machine built for the wrong world. Its failure wasn't about engineering, it was about context. American roads were rougher, the climate harsher, the maintenance crews less familiar, and the riders less forgiving. What worked beautifully on Belgium's boulevard simply unraveled on California asphalt. It became proof that technology can't be copied without culture. You can import design, but not the habits, systems, and streets it was made for. As one planner later put it, innovation isn't about being right. It's about being compatible. Some buses succeed because they fit the world. Others fail because they tried to change it too fast. What do you think? Was the A330 a bold vision or an expensive mistake? Like, if you believe even failures deserve to be remembered, subscribe. Next time we'll tell the story of the European bus that actually did succeed in America.